In this video, we'll talk about how to convert an equation of an ellipse from a general form to a standard form. So the standard form of an ellipse is written like this: x minus h squared over a squared plus y minus k squared over b squared is equal to 1. And the reason that we like to have an ellipse in this form is because it makes it very easy to graph. And that's because the coordinates h, k represent the center of the ellipse, a represents the distance from the center to the vertices, and b represents the distance from the center of the ellipse to the covertices. So when we have an ellipse in this form, it's very easy to graph. So let's check out an example of how to convert an equation from a general form to this standard form. So let's say we have this general form right here: 4y squared plus 9x squared plus 16y minus 18x minus 11 is equal to 0. How can we get this to be in this standard form? Well, the first thing that we want to do is we want to group the x's and group the y's together. So let's rewrite it as 4y squared plus 16y. And then we'll group the x's together, so 9x squared minus 18x. And if we have any constant right here, we can move it over to the right-hand side to be all by itself. So we'll say it's equal to negative 11. We can move that over here to make it a positive 11. Now that we've done that, we want to do something known as completing the square for both the y terms and the x terms. And recall, that's when we take half of the value that is next to either the x or the y and we square it. But before we can do that, we need to make sure that the coefficient in front of the x squared or the y squared is a 1. So the way that we do that is we can pull out a common factor right here of 4 from the y terms, and we'll get 4 times y squared plus, when we factor out a 4 right here, we'll be left with 4y. And then we'll leave a space here. And then we can pull out a 9 right here to make the coefficient in front of the x squared equal to 1. So we'll say plus 9. We'll be left with x squared minus 2x. And then we'll leave a space here, is equal to 11. So now to complete the square, we want to take half of this 4 value and square it. So let's write that up here. 4 divided by 2 squared. What is that? Well, 4 divided by 2 is 2. 2 squared is 4. So right here, to complete the square, we'll add a 4. And remember, whatever we add right here, we also have to add on the right-hand side. But we're not just adding a 4. We have to remember to multiply it by this 4 that we pulled out earlier. So we're actually going to add 4 times 4, which is 16. So we'll say plus 16 on this right-hand side. Now to complete the square for this term, we're going to take half of negative 2 and square it. So let's see what that is. Negative 2 divided by 2 squared. So negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 squared is a positive 1. So we'll say plus 1. And remember, we need to add that to the right-hand side as well. But we're not just adding a 1, we're adding a 9 times 1. So we'll say plus 9. So the benefit of completing the square is that we can now rewrite both of these components in the parentheses as something squared. So we'll get 4 times, it will be y plus half of this value. So half of 4 is 2 squared. So this whole expression, y squared plus 4y plus 4, is equivalent to y plus 2 squared. So notice that it's starting to look more like the standard form that we're trying to get to. All right, now for the x's, we have plus 9, and this expression becomes x. Half of this value would be negative 1. So we have x minus 1, and this whole thing is squared. Now on the right-hand side, we have 11 plus 16, that's 27, plus 9 is 36. So now notice on the right-hand side, we're trying to make it so that it's equal to 1. So how can we get it equal to 1? Well, we could just divide everything by 36, because if we do this 36 divided by 36, that will be equal to 1. So let's divide everything by 36. So when we do that, in this y term, we'll get 4 divided by 36, or we could reduce that to 1/9. So we can write that as, well, the 1 we don't need, but we can just write as y plus 2 squared over 9. Plus, over here, 9 divided by 36, that can be reduced to 1/4. So we can write it as x minus 1 squared over 4. And on this right-hand side, we're left with a 1. And if we'd like, we can rearrange these terms so that the x component is first. So if we want to write our final answer like this, x minus 1 squared over 4 plus y plus 2 squared over 9 is equal to 1. And notice that this is now in the standard form of an ellipse.